Okay, I guess I am on. Welcome, everybody. I am just starting my stream now. It is relatively unusual time, actually. I used to do it a lot later time, and yet I am starting to do it. I guess for this specific one, I'm doing it slightly earlier timeline. And for those of you who will be watching this on the recording. This is sort of the live show. I'm hoping that I'll catch most of Tuesday, if not every other. But so far, it's been every Tuesday, and I'm trying to aim for a slightly earlier time frame if possible. So today, hopefully, it will work out for a couple more people. And hopefully, this would be a session where I can engage with the different viewers and other people who's willing to talk to me. And today we've got a main topic of model critique session. So I have a model that I would like to just kind of go through my process of perhaps rendering and kind of do a bit of stylistic choices here and there. And hopefully you'll be able to pick up a couple of tips and tricks is what I'm hoping for. So I will jump into that in a bit. And I also wanted to just kind of introduce this Let's Talk Tuesday session, which is basically anything that is going to be talking about AEC, tech, and life. Anything, if you would like to be ask some questions, I'll be happy to answer those things as well. I will be able to monitor the chat. There will be some delays, but hopefully, I'll be able to monitor and answer those questions if you guys would have. Um, First of all, I want to mention that I've got a lovely model from, I do not know how to spell this name, but Jayant Gyani. And he was able to provide this SketchUp model to me to do a kind of workflow showcase for you guys. So let me flip the switch to um, the model view. So this is a SketchUp model that I've got. Hopefully my face is not in the way. If I notice that you guys can't see much, then I'm gonna hide away so that you guys could see most of what is going on. And whenever you get handed over the model, whether it be your client, your colleague who has worked on it, it's always helpful to just kind of do a little bit of, let's say, dissection or a bit of forensics over the model so that you understand the model a bit better. So I'm going to zoom all the way out. And the short key for zoom extend is Shift Z. So once you do that, you'll basically back out to the entire zoom extent. And then looks like we are working with some sort of box here. By the way, let me show you the rendered image that he was able to get. So he had shared these renderings that he was able to get out of Enscape. So these three are the ones that he has provided, whilst I've done just rendering on top to just kind of test out what that looks like on my end. Sometimes things can kind of go missing depending on how you set it up. So it's a good practice. So this is my render versus this is his. So obviously there are some setting differences that we're going to have to accommodate, but just to understand. So yeah, it is a princess room. It's a little bedroom theme for a girl, and we're gonna see how we can perhaps improve or depending on sort of the stylistic choices, we can apply some of my preferences in terms of rendering style or techniques. So that is what we are referencing right now. So we've got these scenes that are preset, which is great. So if we go to scene one, we jump to one scene. And then we got scene 2, which we jump to this scene, and then scene 3. So if we go to, if we flip between these scenes, notice that you have sort of an animation. So I actually personally prefer not to have animation. So if you were to go to Window, Model Info, and once you're in there, if you uncheck Enable Scene Transitions, then that way you don't kind of waste time between scenes and just snaps right back. And so that's my preference. And obviously we've got to save this out somewhere just so that we are saving our work somewhere. So that is what I'm going to do. So desktop, I have saved this model now. So yeah, when we jump between scenes, I don't have any delays, if you would. So that's what I kind of prefer. And also, I haven't even started Enscape yet, but I'm just doing what I call like a janitorial work on top of SketchUp to just kind of clean things up. So in this specific scene, whilst I know you can use these CAD lines and it will help the floor plan lines, and it will help in terms of modeling purposes, but I prefer to turn them off for rendering type of scene setup. So what I typically do is I might have like a one scene where it is model purpose scene. So I'll maybe lift the roof or the ceiling. In this case, I have hidden that. So I have not deleted, I've just hidden that so that things are out of my way so I can actually see inside. Usually it's easier to model this way than all the way inside of the room. So I'll lift the top and then kind of angle it in a way that it is more useful for me. And then I'll actually save a view. And I'll usually have that very left, and then I'll probably rename it as a model. So this is sort of the typical practice that I do. And also I'll run purge all. And I have, if you go to extensions and then purge, and then you'll see I have a shortcut of Shift 0, which is something that I hit habitually. You might see me doing that, but in this case, everything's purged, so that is good. If this person never had done any purging, you might see a lot of components, layers, materials, and such, and it might take a bit for it to be all purged, but once done, then it means that your file size is a lot less. So that's something that I would do. And then another type of thing that I would do, I will go to the tags or the layers in a bit, but I want to look at the styles first because I am noticing sort of the profile lines here. So if we go to styles, I have my own specific style that I prefer to use. One is basically on the background, I have it as white instead of this default green, which I don't think it is necessary for my purpose. And whenever I do like an image export, I like white background, or even if it's a screen capture, I prefer white. So I tend to use that, and then make sure I update the styles, as well as I would disable the sky. Just I think that's a bit distracting, especially for interior type of view. So I would update that again. And then if I go to the edge styles, so I was just right here on the background selection, and then if I go to faces, something that I do on my own template is to assign something that has a vibrant color on the back side, so that if something is reversed, it is immediately apparent to me. I'll get into that a bit. That's a part of the janitorial work that I say. So that is something I do. You might keep the transparency quality as faster, and you might want to have it nicer in some cases, but for me, faster usually does it. And then on the edge styles, finally, I want to turn off profile edges. It is much easier for your computer to handle the model when the profile edges are turned off. Modeling with edges turned on is necessary, I feel, because it helps you to land the clicks. But then I'm not so sure if profile edges are so great unless you're trying to export an image directly off of SketchUp. And in my case, I'm not intending to do. And then there's a huge amount of sort of calculation that has to be done when you're orbiting and zooming in and out with the profile edges turned on. So I prefer to turn them off. So this is probably like a style template that I would go with. How's everyone receiving? If anyone have trouble hearing me or seeing the screen, just chat and let me know. That way I understand I'm good to roll and continue with. So that is the style that I would touch up on. And again, I will save it. And then here are some layers or tags that are dedicated on this specific model. Thanks, Phil, for confirming that. Okay, so I've got a couple of layers. When I start off my own files, I have dedicated tags that are already assigned on a model, and I usually assign specific objects, whether it be groups or components, into those layers. But obviously, I'm using someone else's, so I'm not going to bother changing all of that, but I would like to make sense of a couple of things. If it needs to stay, then I'll keep it. If not, then I'll get rid of it. So in this case, I'm just kind of clicking on this and I'm not seeing any changes. So I don't exactly know which one this one is dedicated for. Another thing you could try is hit K once and then it turns on all the back edges. And this is possibly a way to reveal what that might be dedicated to. And before I delete things, I want to make sure I'm not deleting something that is necessary, is basically what I'm going for. Also, the furniture, you'll see a couple of things turn on and off on the furniture, although some of furnitures that are actually furnitures are not in there. So I would see that might be some sort of CAD line. So I see the toilet and also the bed, sort of CAD plan like lines are being turned on and off. There's another bed here. That might be a CAD line. So yeah, so that might not necessarily be needed. And also the door, okay, again, the CAD layer is coming in. I'm assuming that's a dimension that was assigned, and the curtain turns on and off. Okay, so we've got pretty much some mixed matched layers. For this size of a model, what I would usually aim for is one layer for all the walls and maybe another layer for all the floors and one layer for ceiling and the roofs and such. And then one layer might contain all the furnitures, entourages and such, and then another layer for lights. So I try to use the layer or the tags as more categorical, big sort of categorical area rather than something that is overlapping in between. But because this is so small, there's not much entities that are in here, we can actually wipe out the layers and I'm pretty much okay to work with. So in this case, just so that we want to make sure I'm not getting confused in between layers, I will nuke this by just right clicking after selecting all, and then I would delete tags, and then it's going to ask me what do you want me to do for those type of tags. I would just do go to untagged. So I might have just made a huge mistake, but we'll go with it. And so there we got no tag whatsoever in this model. So I will have to do unhide and hide sort of methods on this model. So you'll see me doing that. But basically I've assigned the Shift H for hiding things and then Shift U for unhide all. So when I do that, the ceiling is going to come back, but then I can hide immediately again, Shift H. or I could just directly jump into the scene. And then if I need to come back out to modeling view, I can just click on that, and now I'm good to model. There is a hidden element there. So if I go to view hidden geometry, or hidden objects, and then if I hit Control H, it will show there is something hidden if I need to see that ever. So I see that Harry's here. Good to see you in chat. I know you've been following my channel for quite a bit, so I'm happy to have you on board. I've got Rediactionman 임상훈님. Thank you. I'll continue in English, but he's actually asking what's my spec for the computer. My spec is 2080 Super, RTX 2080 Super for the graphics card, and it's Intel, I want to say 8th gen for the CPU. Yeah, so it is i7 8700 CPU is what I've got in terms of RAM. I've got 32. Yeah, going back to the model. So, where was I? So I need to basically get rid of this CAD layer, or at least be able to isolate. And the way I'm doing this is by basically double clicking on that possible group or component that was there. So make sure you just land your click on the line itself, double click on it, and then I'm able to just kind of go into this layer. And that seems to be the layer for all the CAD line that was used. And I can just kind of isolate that by moving it and confirming it. So that one needs to be on a separate tag or layer, I think, so we can easily turn on and off. So here, I would actually use numbers at the front just so that I can always sort it by number, and then things will kind of sort itself. It's a CAD practice, if you would. And then I'm going to say CAD. And then on the tag up here, I'm going to dedicate it as a CAD layer so I can easily turn on and off. And modeling view, I may keep it on so I can still see what is going on in terms of the CAD layer I had. But on a rendering scene, I would turn that off so that it doesn't bother my view. And I would update that. And here as well, I will update that. If you got more than, let's say, 10 views that are set up, there is a extension that you can utilize. I forget. Layer, no, that's not it. I think it's called something like Scene Manager or something. It's been a while since I used this thing. So I'm not gonna bother trying to go back to it. Okay, let's jump on that one. All right, let's skip that. But basically, you can update that so that when you're flipping through the scenes, your CAD layer is hidden. You can go back to the model, and then you can still see the CAD layer. So that's fine. If you want to go through the trouble of designating all the furnitures for the organizational sake, you can certainly do that. I would say something like 03 dot, and then that is furniture. And then you might even do something like 01 dot wall. I'm just kind of prioritizing in terms of numeric value. So walls and floors are kind of like 01 type of stuff. And then entourages, furnitures, lights, those things gets later sequential number is basically what I do. But let's see how the walls are playing. So I got wall here, there. I just select those walls, and maybe even this column. I would just put that in a wall layer. And then I would do floor. So let's do floor. And then let's see what this floor's got. Excuse me. Yeah, and then designate that as a floor, so we can turn the floor on and off, and the walls on and off. This is an interior fur out of a wall. I would still put that into the wall. And then the rest of it could kind of go to the furniture. So if I keep all of these layers off, and then perhaps designate some of these as a wall, or I can maybe put this one as a wall as well. You see how as I designate the tag into different layer, it kind of goes away. Let's also make a door layer. And I would put this into the door layer and then keep that off. So as I designate them, they kind of go away. And then, sorry, I understand you can probably hear my kids in the background. It's not too late, so they're not asleep yet. Yeah, and then there's a little dot that was bothering me, so I was just trying to see what that is. I think that is a guide point, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, it is a guide point. And there's a one way to get rid of all of that. I prefer not to use guide points or guidelines in my personal workflow. And you can just go to edit and then delete guides. Once you click that, you can nuke all lines, guidelines, and guide points. That's how I usually roll, just so that I don't see weird dots and lines in the middle of my model. And then I'm gonna purge once more. So there's one more layer that is going missing because I haven't designated furniture. I've undone that. And then I'm gonna select everything in here, basically the whole thing that doesn't belong to any other layers. And then I'm gonna change it to furniture layer. So all of everything else belongs to furniture. I did see a little light here. That's, I'm guessing, some sort of Enscape light. I will look at that later on, but for now, that should be fine. And if I unhide all, there is a ceiling. So let's do the ceiling again. Ceiling tag. And then that goes to ceiling layer. So at least theoretically, everything in this model exists inside of one of these tags. So if I go to the model layer, unhide all, and then just control everything by the layer. So update that. So that's how I would do that. Jayant is, I hope I'm saying your name right, but is on the chat. Great to see you here. Gotta be more organized with the layer system on SketchUp. Well, unfortunately, they're now called tags. It's even more confusing, but yeah, having a bit more organization is helpful in the long run. Obviously, when there's a schedule and project deadlines, you don't necessarily get to do all of that, but once you set out correctly, or I would say a bit more organized, then you'll be much better off in the long run. So I've done that. So let's go to scene 1 and then run Enscape. We will be looking at Enscape and SketchUp today, and hopefully my model wouldn't crash. Things do happen, so bear with me, and let's see how long it takes to launch Enscape on this specific model. Okay, Enscape has launched. The help dialog on the right will be appearing. In my case, I don't really need it, so I'm gonna minimize that. And then snap the Enscape window on the right, and then SketchUp on the left. I'm seeing one export error saying that one asset could not be found. That could be one of the assets library stuff that for whatever reason, network reason or whatever may be, it is not being recognized. If I notice anything that is not being correctly imported in, I'll replace. Okay, that. And then I can snap this to the left by window left arrow. And then I can also match the viewport by just synchronizing the view. This is a good trick whenever you're kind of showcasing your model, so that you can kind of zoom in and out, and then your view will be matched. So if I go to the model view, and then your view will be matched here. So it is kind of useful in some aspects, but here I want to focus on one specific view. Let's say this view right here. So I'm going to park it right there by just clicking this once more again, and then the view will be fixed here. I can actually move a little bit closer so that it's not as heavily distorted. So here's my view, and then here's the modeling view basically. And for those of you who are not familiar with Enscape sort of real-time rendering stuff, if you were to move the bed, you'll see how it just immediately updates there, which is great. If I want to undo, I can hit Control Z or basically undo here, and then it'll just snap right back. When when I have selected something, if I had moved somewhere, and then if I want to deselect this one, there is a shortcut, I believe, select none, which is Control T. That is a shortcut that I don't typically use. If I want to unselect, I actually hit P, which is push pull, and then spacebar, and it basically deselects everything. I don't know, that's a muscle memory, kind of like hitting an escape when you're using CAD, but basically that is so that whenever I click something or type in something, I haven't really selected anything. It is, if you keep that, it is kind of prone to accidents. So that's a sort of a habitual thing, P and then spacebar to deselect things, but you can Control T to deselect if you wish to. So here is a bit of a stylistic choice that I would make inside of Enscape. So up here is the visual settings. By the way, we are about 30 minutes into the session, and I've only just opened up Enscape for rendering. So I'll try and cover as much as I can for this hour, and we may continue in the next session if need be. But I want to be a bit thorough, and hopefully you'll be able to pick up a couple of things off of this session. And if you have any questions, just feel free to ask. If you're watching this in recording, perhaps leave it in a comment so that I'm aware what you guys are wondering in the next session, and maybe I will be able to fill you in. And this is just the start of sort of the critique session for an hour. I'll cover what I can, and may be able to continue in the next sessions if need be, but we'll see how it goes. This is just, I'm kind of getting the feel of it and kind of see what may be the most amount of interest. Anyways, going here, I personally prefer having a bit of outline. So I usually park this at about 20% for most scenes of mine, and the reason for that is because I like seeing sort of a definition of edges. It really is helpful to read, especially when you haven't got that many materials or that many geometries that are being played inside of the scene. It kind of keeps that not necessarily hyper realistic look, but a bit conceptual. And as a designer, I want to do designs rather than a very hyper realistic type of renderings. So that's where I would like to keep my outlines at. Or if I want to be a bit more realistic type of look, I may reduce it to 10%. But this is a tip, if you may. In the process of designing, if you're actually having a bit of outline, that helps you to fill the gaps of the things that are not really designed yet, or it makes it look more detailed, if you know what I mean. So I would keep it at 20%. It doesn't eat up your resources as much. You may see a couple of weird things on the bed, like creases and such, but in my case, I prefer to keep it there. So with the preset, I would actually save that somewhere. So create preset, and I'm going to call it interior. By the way, with the new version, you can save the create. You can keep the presets saved. So I would keep certain type of values in there. So 20% right there. And then depth of field, field of view, I may play with that a little bit. Since this is a tight space, I may increase it to somewhere like 110 so that I can see what I intend to show at the least. And on the modeling side as well, so typically on SketchUp, you'll see something like this. And it's very tight. It's very, very difficult to model with this sort of tight zoom. So in order to widen your view, apparently Jayant already has done this, but if you hit Z once, which is a zoom tool, and you'll see on the bottom right corner of the SketchUp, it would say 35 degree, which is a default. And then you can type in 60 DEG, enter. And then basically that will give you sort of the widened view. 60 degree is usually okay in terms of tight space. If you want to increase it more, you can 80 degree. But things start to become really distorted as you go wider. So I like somewhere around 60 degrees. That is what I would like to do. And that is basically Z, which is a zoom tool. You can zoom in and out. That's pretty much what the zoom tool is meant for, but you can play with the field of view as well. Chinmay is saying try night mode in this one. Okay, I will. I want to see Enscape and ambient lights. Sure. Phil is saying, Reed Thomas, Phil is saying better to be thorough than fast. Absolutely, you're right. Irv is saying, I always hate the way Enscape rendering the carpet. Yes, this looks a little bit, especially with the outline. So that may be a reason I kind of reduced the outline. It doesn't really help. Okay. Anyways, yeah, the carpet, it's not as realistic. I take your point. No coffee till you're done. No, not at all. Probably in version 3.1, Enscape has addressed the carpet issue. Have they? I know you can make it shorter. We'll get into that. I'll struggle with you. And feel free to chat so that I know the proper way. Obviously, I'm not know-it-all, but again, this is just my stylistic or my workflow, and I would love to learn from you guys as well. So if you catch me doing something wrong, please chat so that I don't mind embarrassing myself, but we all are here just to learn. So feel free to chat and let me know. If your machine is struggling, by the way, it's always helpful to just kind of reduce your quality. And some scenes don't really take impact in terms of overall quality, yet it may help you in terms of getting your model up and going and not as sluggish. So you can do it that way. In this case, high is fine, so I'll keep it at there. A couple of other things that you may touch up on. I like a bit more vignette, so I may increase that a little bit, and just so that I keep my focus to the center of the image rather than the edges. It kind of helps you to kind of direct your view towards the center. So that's something that I also do. I may turn on or turn off auto contrast depending on the scene. So that's something I may play with. As well as auto exposure. Auto exposure is usually good, but auto contrast is something that I definitely do click on and off depending on the scene. But in this case, I'd like auto contrast, so I'll keep it on. Atmosphere, nothing I typically mess with here. I typically don't like wind all that much. I appreciate the animated trees, but you'll see that how the carpet is going to be animated when you have a lot of wind, and it doesn't particularly make sense. Even if I'm outside, I don't really need that much of a tree animation, so I typically just lower the wind so that I don't see any movement in terms of either it be my carpet or the trees outside. Um, I just wish, if anyone at Enscape Development is listening, I wish uh, it's wind 0 as an intensity as a default, and if you really want animation, you would increase it rather than throwing animation out there first. That's just my take on it, though. Sky, I have it as a white ground, but if we look at the reference image, I think he's had it as a different type of background there. So in here, we can designate different backgrounds. So if we look back here, it's kind of too bright to see outside, but we can have it something like a town, which is what he has chosen, and we can see the town outside, which is great. This could be like a little high-rise building that you're looking outside for our princess. So that is good. And then next tab is output. I don't mind full HD for most of quality. If you're like final type of rendering, you may increase it to 4K, but for typical purpose, full HD is fine. Yes, absolutely, Phil, you're right. Carpet height can be modified in the material editor, especially on SketchUp side. So I will get to that. And I believe once you designate it as a carpet, it doesn't play along with the wind, is what behavior, what Enscape has configured the behavior of the carpet. I prefer JPEG just for, I know this is a very controversial thing. PNG is lossless, whereas JPEG is compressed image. I prefer JPEG just because it is less file size, and for quick as Enscape is, unless you're going for like a final image, and I typically don't even do post processing, and I just fire off these images so quick, and for ease of use I use JPEG. You can fight me for it, and I do respect your personal choices, but this is just mine personal choice. Default folder, I like designating my desktop so that I can again quickly fire the snapshots that we can get out of Enscape, and for that you must check on this automatic naming so that you can just snap and keep going with your designs. And we're not touching video at the moment, nor panorama, so that is fine. We can just kind of exit out at this point. And then just to save renderings, we would just kind of position ourselves. As I've said, I would just look at it like so, and then either click on this here or Shift F11, and then it's going to export or snapshot or image rendering, if you would. So here, and then maybe frame it up like that, Shift F11, snap, and then another snap here, maybe up a little bit, F11, Shift F11, and then maybe we go on top of the bed, like so, and then F11, and there's too much light that is coming toward us, so maybe change the time of the day a little bit so that it is directed slightly differently. And then again, snapshot. We're testing out how things may look, and again, Chinmay said do it at the night scene, so for that sake, let's go to night and see how that looks. Here you go. It looks beautiful. The artificial light that you have pre-configured seems to be working quite well. So we can go here, look at the sky, sunset, and then this is the artificial light. Again, snap, and then we can just go to desktop. Let me go to desktop, and then you'll see all of these images that are saved. So I can quickly just examine what kind of snaps that I have saved. Cool, right? So I don't need to come up with clever naming for all of this files that I decide to save, and These are about 1 megabyte, so they're not huge files either. So I prefer kind of that sort of quick method. Obviously, if you want to go a little bit, I would say final material, then I think you would go it as go and save as a PNG, and then up your quality to 4K or even bigger if you need to. But for this sort of purpose, I think typically I keep it as a full HD. So we really haven't touched anything in terms of actual modeling and how we can improve certain type of lighting and such. Well, the controversial thing, let's look at the carpet. I'm gonna snap the time of the day back to where it was saved, and because each scene saves the time of the day, you can see it here. All of those dates, the time of the day and the dates are saved in those scenes. So as you click on, your scene will snap back. So I just wanted to mention that even if you had changed inside of Enscape for the time of the day, once you click on that, it will just snap right back to where it was saved as. And once you actually change this, it will change as well. But it is not changing actual value in here. It's just temporary change. So again, if you click on that, it'll snap right back and it'll change the Enscape view. So I wanted you to understand how those time of the day and the scene behaves. I just want to ask if you can teach us how to edit the scenes you saved from Enscape. You mean like a Photoshop change? I think Irv is asking that. Photoshop techniques will be much later sort of talk. I typically don't do much of a post-processing. I want to rely on just basically these two softwares to export my images. Again, being quick and sending all of these images for the reference to either colleague or client for design purposes, what I typically use these softwares for. But if you want to make it extra beautiful and do post-processing, then you certainly can. I mean, like if you press F in Enscape, you can create scenes directly from Enscape. Can you? Oh, I misclicked. You mean, oh, setting up your views? Basically, it's using these scenes, and you can favoritize basically your scenes in here. It used to be that there is like a list and you can favoritize and it will show up on your view management. But right now, these are the ones, and then now I can click on this and basically it is snapping back to this specific scene that's been saved. If you had changed your names of the scene, that will actually change accordingly, listing in here. If you want to go ahead and edit that, you can save it as a favorite. And once you do that, save that, yeah, and then you'll see it comes up as a favorite. And once you actually export standalones, those favorite views will be saved, and you can actually flip between scenes by page up and down. So if you click page up and down, it will flip in between. But also in SketchUp side, if you do page up and down, it jumps between scenes as well. So that's a quick sort of shortcuts that you can do in order to, so if you had synchronized the view, you can just go up and down quickly, jumping between. And that's usually how I get around, okay, if you're kind of stuck between the walls, and then you just hit page down, and then you'll snap right back. But yeah, basically that's how you would set it up, and you can also designate it the preset values for the settings. So interior is what I designate, and as you go back to that scene, you'll have that preset showing up for that scene. Good shout out. I see. Creating a view. I typically do it off of SketchUp. I try to use this feature of synchronizing view on SketchUp side. And then once I park it, I can create a view here. And that's typically how I like to control my views. Obviously, you can save it from this side too, on the Enscape side. Enscape versus Lumion. I had a whole hour of talk about rendering softwares, but for this specific purpose, I think Enscape is more suitable for quick snapshots again. Um, yeah, let's look at carpet. When we sample the material, so it's B for short for paint buckets, and then hold down Alt key to sample the material, and then you'll see that material being activated. And the material that's being used for the carpet is right now called color M002 grass. Um, I usually like having a bit more meaningful names on the material. Material becomes like the key in rendering, and once I click on this in model button or icon, you'll see how many materials are being used for the specific model. And then when it receives anything in particular, whether it be grass, even glass, water, those type of very specific materials that has Enscape sort of uniqueness to it, Enscape type of materiality. I actually like having some sort of number again, so that we can sort it by names. Or I kind of mentioned on my webinar to have like a little dot in front of it so that it always comes up first on the list. So that's typically what I would do. I'm actually not sure why it is not sorting by names in model. There you go. So you see how the grass or the carpet is showing up at the first. So dot or 00 dot is usually kind of naming scheme that I use. And then in this case, I will say something like carpet. And I think carpet does it. Does make it as sort of the carpet. And if it is regular, it doesn't go away because it already has Enscape material. So here, if we change this to carpet, let's carpet 1, there could be multiple type of carpets, and maybe we give here. So right now the type is grass, and then there is a carpet. This one doesn't receive wind, as I have mentioned. So Enscape made that distinction. So it is probably better to designate carpet for a carpet. So there you are. And then there are some keywords that you can play with, which is the grass. When you have a grass name on a material, basically it becomes grass. And then when you have name inside of the name, water inside of the name of the material, then it becomes water. Or you can bypass it and then just designate the type. Is basically how there are a couple of keywords that you can play with, which is shown here. You can take time to look at that. Okay, so carpet, and then you can change the height with texture. I don't know how this works actually. Here we have probably the least amount of height, and yet it is pretty tall carpet. So this is where I get really confused. There's a height texture. I think that is the bump and the normal map. But then here, carpet settings, once we have it really tall, okay, nobody would want carpet as tall as this. And then also, that is not too short. That is still very tall carpet. So I don't know. That's something that we need to work out. I mean, Enscape needs to work out. So that's how I would leave it as. You can have it as a default and just assign some sort of fabric-alike material. So here, if I go to edit, and you can go to, I have a couple of material package that I have saved up over the years. So if I want to have kind of rug-like texture, I can open that up, and then rather than a tall carpet, I can kind of keep it. Let's make that slightly bigger. So, and then this one is not repeatable. So let's sample the material and then go in here, texture, position, and then basically position it in a way that it is not occupying a seam in the middle of reset. So there you go. Once I do that, it is better some ways. Oh, there's another carpet here. In that case, let's apply, position the texture. I wonder if it's a component that's been scaled. Then I might be doing completely wrong thing. But my point here is that you don't have to use an Enscape carpet. Sometimes it just looks off. Having a hard edge doesn't really help either. So here is a little bit of struggle, but I'm just presenting you an option. I have a couple of chats. In the 3D, quick question: does your screen recording affect Enscape performance? Thanks in advance. It can. In my case, I usually don't notice much. My computer is enough to handle, but obviously, if you have more limited setup, it may slow down your sort of screen sharing or screen recording or streaming. In my case, it's fine. And I understand kids are also watching like Disney, so they might be occupying my internet bandwidth too, but I am aware that it should be okay. You can scale the component of carpet. I don't think that changes the overall height, does it? Let's test it. And I have a case of this. This is a SketchUp issue, but once you kind of minimize your screen, sometimes all of these icons become collapsed. Anyways, Enscape materials. Let's make that into carpet. And if you scale it, I know that used to be the way, but I don't know once you were able to change the height, it was something that allows you to have shorter carpet. I don't think that is a way anymore. No matter the scale, it still is the same height, I think. Yep, still is. So yeah, changing scale doesn't work anymore. I know it used to be. Maybe like if you make the entire model to a completely different size, then you can, but obviously we don't want to modify the entire model for the sake of carpet. Yes, at least somebody agrees with me. The JPEG carpet is more convincing than the Enscape effect. I agree. Thank you for backing me up. So here, let's change the default, and we've got about 5 more minutes to cover some more rendering here. I definitely did want to look at this background here. We have an image that is not seamless, and you can obviously see the repeat of an image. I don't exactly know how this was probably Googled and then designated here. So just like how I configured sorry, let me stop the sync. Just like how I have configured the carpet image, I would usually kind of cut it like this so that everywhere else is maybe like a pink color. You can okay that and then kind of sample off of this image so that everywhere else is kind of like pink. So it's taking that color and then spread across, and then that image is just being used once. So that might be a little trick if the image is something that you can't really find something of a seamless image of. So that might be a way to kind of deal with. You can at least here up here you cannot see, and then maybe the door, if you want to have avoid this sort of seam here, you can reposition the image specific to the door, so that way it is not at least repeating in the middle of the door. So sample that. Once you position that, sample that, and then select all, and then just paint on top, and you'll see how that positioning applies to the entire door. So that looks somewhat better in terms of positioning. If you really want to just kind of repeat elsewhere, another trick up my sleeve is to divide this further. I haven't done this in a while, so let's see how fast I can do this. You can go to Photoshop and then massage this image. That's one way. Or do this and then apply here, texture, and then you can flip this right and left. And once you do that, sometimes if you don't have this weird white border on the image itself, let's just kind of do that. So you see how it repeats. So the other image on one other side is flipped, and then you can pretty much do the same practice at the bottom. So you can do it here and then position, and I can flip it upside down and then just match that here so that the image looks somewhat contiguous. Once you do that, I can maybe do the same thing here. Let's not bother. But yeah, once you do that, the image doesn't have a very obvious seam. Is a quick trick that you can do. And Jayant is saying it looks better. Thank you. Thank you. I tried. So that's what you can do for the sake of SketchUp, although it doesn't really show here. If you want to hide that, hit E for eraser tool or rubber tool for those of you who are across the other side. Hold down Shift key and then just go over these edges, and then it'll basically hide those edges for you so that it doesn't appear as obvious on your scene. So that's what you can do, and that's something that jumped out on me when I was looking at the reference images. So hopefully that is somewhat better. At least the person who made this scene says it's looking better. So I like that. I really like the bed. I can't complain. Sometimes having a good amount of detail on your bed is really difficult. Sometimes you can have a very boxy bed versus one that actually has blanket on it. This one, it suits, so I'm not going to bother. It's seemingly like a lot of edges, but in specific, this is not too much in comparison to other type of geometry that are in here. It is a lot, but for typical detailed bed with the blanket on top, I kind of like the amount of details that this one has, and the fact that you can actually manipulate these colors. It's great. Sometimes they don't even have that much of a distinction. Mirror is working very well. Mirror is mirror-like. And then what else? Here is another one that I wanted to touch before we wrap things up. I'm sorry that I wasn't able to cover as much. But even if when we go to the night scene, you can see how there is a cove light, kind of strip light that is appearing on the ceiling, and I can see the downlight that you have placed. However, the actual bulb doesn't light up, which kind of makes it look a little weird. It wouldn't actually look that way. Lights actually, maybe if you turn on the light, then you actually want to see a bright white spot when there's a light turned on. So, sorry, my kids. So what you want to do is actually, on top of having a downlight show up on your scene, you want to make sure those things actually have a emissive layer or emissive material on top. I'm not sure what this is. Let's see. Is this a ceiling lamp? So this is just a regular SketchUp geometry, and then it's looking like it has been softened. And if you hold down Control and Shift key, that's a little trick that SketchUp doesn't expose. But once you do that, I can have this bottom edge is not as soft, so that I can assign different type of material, make a brand new material. I'm gonna call it 00 dot emissive 01. And then I would put a little bit of color, and just so that I can see what if it is a light or not. And usually having a little bit of warmth in the color of the light is helpful. So here I can distinguish between that color versus the one that I'm about to apply. Once I do that, I'm gonna back out and completely embarrass myself because it doesn't change anything here. I think this might be an asset that is coming from Enscape. Let's confirm that. And if I go to the material, Enscape material, let's pull that out so that it doesn't hide itself. And if I go here, right now it is default, but I can actually change that to self illumination is already applied. And then even if I increase it, nothing shows up because that is an asset, I think. So if that is the case, then I would typically like to use SketchUp geometry. So let's see. So I was modifying Enscape asset library that gets replaced, and that doesn't look right to me. Is it just me? Why is it appearing black? Okay, so it is an Enscape asset, and I don't like that. So I just did a paste in place so that I can actually make this into bigger light that I can actually assign color. So go in, copy this, come out, paste in place, edit, paste in place. I have a shortcut of Control-Shift-V. And then once I do that, you can see how that has come in. I'm gonna increase the scale a little bit so that it is actually bigger than that. And then here, make it into a group. And once I go in, I can actually delete this. Alt-H is what I have used to reveal hidden geometry. So that is a single face, which I can then push-pull. Once I push-pull, actually before I do that, I want to actually assign default color so that I'm not reversing the face. And then here, I don't want it as angled as this. So, okay, let's... Fine. I'll actually make it circular. I'm using all the tricks that I have up my sleeve on the fly. So forgive me if I'm doing all of this incredibly complex. And then because I have designated this emissive material with the 0, dot, it's going to show up on the top of the list. And once I do that, there you go. Typically you want to assign a little bit of offset so that you see the frame of the downlight. So it's faint, but it is there. And then we can modify the material. So if I sample that material and then reduce, there you go. So I would actually recess that into the ceiling, but that's how I would like it to show so that we actually have a white spot on it. Yeah, changing the assets, Enscape assets is currently not possible. I don't know why it was appearing such way, but that was sort of my hack with given time. So I think we're gonna wrap it up here. Once we have done that, I can either hit Shift F11 or just hit that icon. And once I do that, that's our result today. Yeah, so we need to wrap things up. I know I kind of rushed things, but obviously I try to cover as much as I can. We can possibly continue this same model and try to improve next week. I'll have to see, because I know Ted has joined a couple of sessions. I don't know if he's willing to or if we have any guest speakers. I will announce that later on. But for today, that is it. Thank you for everyone joining the session and kind of chatting away whatever that you wanted to hear. Obviously, if you leave comments or any chats, I'll definitely go through and then try to mention those things in the later sessions. Again, thanks everybody, and I'll see you next week.